Welcome to Grave Discussions. I am one half of your horrifying host duo back from the dead, Barnabas.
And I am the other half of the deadly duo, the great prince of demons, Samael.
Yes. Welcome back, Gravers, to yet another new episode of Grave Discussions. It's been a while, but we are finally back. This is episode 107, The Return of the Living Bushwackers.
We've been here forever, pun intended.
Honestly, it could have been so easy to just stop doing the podcast, but it's been 4 years, 5. Hold on, 5 years or something like that.
Was it February or March?
I think
it was
March,
5 years.
March 2018. So almost 6 years. That's
holy
crazy,
cow, dude.
And I mean, we're still pumping out episodes, guys, and we are so happy to be back. Life takes unexpected turns, but one thing always stays true, and it is Grave Discussions. And we are still here. We're still kicking, and we're bringing you guys another new episode. This one is going to revolve around a brand new film that came out a few weeks ago now, I would say. And it's actually a sequel to a cool little indie, low budget, kind of retro throwback slasher movie called The Barn. And it is The Barn Part 2.
And it's so weird how we ended up finding The Barn. Me and Barnabas were just vibing at my place. We're just scrolling through Tubi. That's before Tubi got really big and everyone knew about it. So we were just scrolling, trying to find something. And then the cover art really stood out. Jesus Christ. The cover art stood out. And it was The Barn. And I was like, the hell is this? And it was throwback 80s style supernatural slasher. And I was like, oh, this is right up our fucking alley. And then lo and behold, almost 6 years later, here we are about to cover the second movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a wild ride, and I've been waiting for the sequel for a while. I think you maybe told me about the possibility of the sequel. I mean, it had to have been a year or two ago or something when they first announced it, and I was
I think
hyped.
It was 2.
Yeah, and I was super hype about it, and it's finally here, so that's what we're going to talk about. But as always with these, delays in the episodes, we have a lot going on. So I just wanted to see how you're doing, man, and what you've been up to. Give us a little, sneak peek into Samael's life.
Golly gee whiz. Samael has been swamped at work and the changes that work has been presenting. But we've ranted enough about work before the podcast. I want to get into the positive. Yeah. Both of mine and Barnabas' birthdays just passed. And he's, as you know, if you didn't know this, Barnabas is 1 day older than me.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that we became bestest buds forever. And we were just we had more in common than we thought. And the big 30 hit us both. And for my big 30, I got a Terrifier mask. I got a bunch of horror movie patches for my vests. I got a bunch of new horror stickers to litter my room with. I got a bunch of beard grooming stuff, some cologne, and most importantly, I got the new Xbox Series X, and I have pre-ordered the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, dropping August 18th, and I'm so excited. I'm going to be streaming on Twitch, and if you guys ever want to check me out, it's twitch.tv/hextreefitty.
All right, Tree Fitty, hell yeah!
I need about Tree Fitty.
Nice, dude. That all sounds sick. And just a heads up, Gravers, the next episode of Grave Discussions, which we'll be recording very soon, is actually going to be about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game. So we're gonna get it, we're gonna play it. Sam's gonna stream it, of course, and once we have some hands-on experience and feedback, we're actually going to discuss it for the podcast and probably do maybe even a little video review showcasing the game and everything. And that's going to be a fun one. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
It's going to be the highlight of the summer. That's for sure.
Yeah. pretty much the end of the summer going into Halloween. I can't believe it's almost fucking fall, dude. That's crazy.
Speaking of which,
Mhm.
I was on one of the main roads where I live on the east side. They have 2 Spirit Halloweens opening up soon this
Ooh.
month, and I drove by one of them today. The doors were wide open, and they were unloading new stuff and
Ooh.
walking it into the store today.
Nice. Yeah, I'm super excited. I mean, my wife has already sent me a bunch of posts about like the Code Orange stuff at all the stores and like new Halloween products, and I'm just like, holy shit! Like we got to go to at least 5 different stores to see what kind of Halloween products they have. And
Yeah, I don't know if
we already
you
bought a bunch too. So
I don't know if you saw my my Instagram story, but Meyer's already stocking up on the Halloween candy.
nice. No, I didn't see that, but I mean, I think Walmart has their Halloween stuff out now. Pottery Barn and like Crate and Barrel and like Home Goods had it, and we actually bought a bunch of stuff at Home Goods already.
Yeah, I know fucking Joanne, Michaels, and Hobby
mhm.
Lobby over here have already stocked up on Halloween stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's the best time of the year in my opinion, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I mean, as for me, um, for my birthday, I didn't get too much. I mean, I did buy myself some movies, but the main attraction really was going to Motor City Nightmares, which I mean, I've
Oh
shared
my god.
on TikTok and I've shared with you and everything, and it was absolutely incredible. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen my highlights of that, definitely go check out the Grave Discussions TikTok, where I basically made like a little TikTok about that, and it was just such an amazing time. I mean, meeting Bruce Campbell, Kane Hodder, Dee Wallace, Barbara Crampton, it was absolutely incredible. And then like seeing all the other people there, of course, was fantastic, and that was awesome. And then over the past weekend, actually, we saw something that I think you would also dig, and it's not something that I was like sure I was going to enjoy, but it was actually a circus, but it was horror themed,
Oh my
and
god.
it's called the Paranormal Cirque, Cirque, and they like travel, you know, the country. Of course, they're like a traveling circus or whatever. But it's like an adult themed show. There's like no one under the age of 13 allowed. 13 to 17, like you have to be supervised by a guardian, and it's just awesome. Like there's a bunch of horror themed shit. They curse and everything, and they put on a show, you know, like there's acrobatics and gymnastics and circus shit like that, but they also have like an ongoing kind of story in the show, and it's just awesome. So if they ever come down to you, you got to go check it out.
That sounds so badass. Yeah, over here we don't have a horror themed one, but always around November we got this thing called the Hadi Shrine Circus,
Okay.
which is just like a traditional circus where people do acrobatics and they bring out elephants and a whole bunch of other crazy shit.
Nice. Well, yeah, check out that Paranormal Cirque, because I mean they might come to Indiana. I don't know,
I hope
but
so.
they're like in Michigan now, and we saw them in Ann Arbor, and they were like going to a few other cities too. So
Damn.
yeah, it was dope. But that I mean that's pretty much been it for me. I've still been trying to watch some new horror movies and doing reviews for de facto filmreviews.com. So I'm actually going to be covering this new like Frankenstein kind of adaptation called Birth Rebirth this week. And then we saw Cobweb over the weekend, which was actually pretty sick. I think you would probably enjoy it. And yeah, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about The Barn 2 today. So we won't hold you guys up anymore. Let's get right into our discussion of The Barn Part 2. We will do that right after this very quick break. So go do what you got to do, and we'll be back on Grave Discussions. And welcome back, fiends, to episode 107. We are talking all about The Barn Part 2. Now, first things first, what is The Barn? We kind of went into it a little earlier at the beginning of the episode, but I would assume if you're listening to this, you probably have seen The Barn one or at least are aware of it, but as we mentioned, the barn came out a few years ago at least. Let me look up the actual like release date.
Should be 2017 if I'm not mistaken, or 2018.
2016, I guess it was produced, but maybe it came out 2017. That sounds about right. But yeah, it was the little like retro throwback slasher movie that could. Super low budget. Acting was questionable at best, during like a lot of it. But it was really, really cool. Like it had that 80s vibe down to a T. It had some awesome practical effects, mostly practical effects, and even that like weird 80s style, like dinky CGI kind of, in a lot of places. And featured some really cool monsters. And why don't you kind of give a backstory as to like what the plot, the concept of that movie was?
So there's this barn. If you knock 3 times, you open a portal from hell and unleash 3 demons. The boogeyman, which is like the devil's right-hand man. This like pumpkin-headed dude. I'm not great with names. I love the movie. There's the pumpkin head dude, and then there's a scarecrow, and then they murder you. And the story follows Sam and Josh. They run like a haunted house. Sam like is a prank on like the mayor or some shit. I don't know who she is. And then she tells his dad, and he gets grounded. So, they're out trick-or-treating. They decide to go knock on this barn, and they literally unleash hell. And that's the premise of the first one.
Yep. Yeah, there's the ritual and everything. And it's just a really fun movie, especially if you like those kind of like raunchy, campy,
hokey
80s, slasher movies. That's essentially the gist. And now, God, 7 years later, we get The Barn Part 2. And obviously we're going to start off with no spoilers for the people who maybe haven't seen the movie yet. And, we'll kind of get around to whether we liked it or not, and whether you should watch it or not. But I mean, I think you should still check it out anyway, especially if you've seen the first movie. But then we'll get into the spoilers so we can really, dive in and talk about how we feel about it. But The Barn Part 2 takes place sometime after the first movie. And that first movie took place in a little town called Weary Falls, I believe. Is that right, Sam?
I think you're right. And it took place in the 90s as well.
Yeah. Actually, Halloween 1989. So just on the
89.
cusp.
Okay.
Just on the cusp of the 90s.
Thought it was the 90s. But yep, you're right. 89.
Yeah, this movie does take place during like the early 90s. I think officially the story takes place in 1992, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, yeah. So I remember they said it's been like 3 years.
Yeah, that sounds right. So now we're, I think, in like an adjacent town called Helen's Valley. And so Sam and Josh are still missing. And this story primarily revolves around the sister of Josh, if I'm not mistaken. And then the then girlfriend of Sam. Or, well, she wasn't his girlfriend.
Love interest.
Right? Love interest, yeah.
They liked each other.
Right, exactly.
Sam was kind of oblivious to the fact that she liked him in the first movie because guys are stupid.
Yeah, and he was too into Halloween. That was the other big thing, is that it took place around Halloween, and the whole thing, it was kind of like Trick or Treat almost, where Sam was kind of like the shepherd of Halloween. Like he had these rules that you had to follow and stuff like that. So he was mostly concerned about that, not about, getting poontang, as it were. But yeah, essentially this movie mostly revolves around those two girls. Now they're part of a sorority, and they have to put on like this annual fundraiser or something for Halloween, and they decide to do a haunted house. And of course, somehow it ends up being a haunted house at a barn, basically in memory to Sam and Josh. And they're trying to like raise money and everything with like the townspeople and stuff like that. So that's essentially the premise. And of course, you're at a barn, and they're not sure if they believe in this in this curse or whatever, this legend, right? And so naturally they trigger everything and it all starts all over again. That's the basic gist of the barn part 2.
And then what follows are a series of cheesy, gnarly, over the top kills, which, if I'm being for real, I love the kills, and I'm not gonna lie, some of the kills made me cringe, but in a good way, not like that was so shit, like in like a, oh god, what the fuck kind of way.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the best ones, honestly, especially for a movie like this. Like, if you're not going overboard, then I think you're not doing something right. But
I agree.
The kills were fantastic. Really, this movie still does capture the spirit of what made the first movie so fun and so enjoyable, and really just tries to continue that on, in this movie. But obviously, the budget is a little bit bigger. Probably not by much, but a little bit bigger. I mean, I assume it took them like 6-7 years to make it for good reason, but the production value is a little bit better than the Barn Part 1. But they really try to introduce some new concepts, some new things, and generally make it a little bit bigger than the Barn Part 1. We actually get more monsters in the Barn Part 2. And we also get some pretty cool cameos. I don't want to dive into all of them in this spoiler-free little discussion right now, but we get some cool cameos. We get more monsters. Generally better practical effects and some better production value overall with like makeup and camera and, stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. But in essence, it's still the barn. It's pretty much everything that made the first movie kind of like a cult Halloween classic. But whether or not this one is as good or worse or better is definitely a good point of discussion. And it's something that we'll dive more into. But in general, without giving away too many spoilers, what did you think of The Barn Part 2?
I just thought it was really fun. And that's the thing. If like the movie doesn't take itself seriously, which this one didn't, it was really a love letter to Halloween, a love letter to classic slasher movies, then if the movie's like that, then I can enjoy it a lot more and then forget about like stuff like the hokey acting and like the goofy effects and stuff like that, and just follow the fun that goes along as it happens and seeing what happens to our heroine. And do we get to find out what happened to our heroes from the first movie? Where did they go? How is this whole situation going to be solved? And then really this movie also, just like the first one and just like many Halloween movies that I do love, captures that spirit of Halloween, which all of my favorite Halloween themed movies manage to capture. And honestly, that's all I really care about. It feels Halloween-y. People are dressed up. They're celebrating Halloween. People are getting murdered. There's monsters. I mean, it's classic Halloween. Spooky monsters and people dying and masks and trick-or-treating. And I mean, like, what else do you want? And I felt like it accomplished what it wanted to. And my expectations weren't low and my expectations weren't high. I was just like, yay, I get to watch it. So I didn't have like a set like mindset going into it. I was just like, let me just enjoy this because like I've been talking about this and I've been expecting this one for years, and I even like backed it. So like, I made like a little donation, and honestly, I'm glad I finally got to get around to watching it. I still need to watch I think it was also made by Justin Seaman. It's Seaman. It's 1031, the anthology. I also have 1031 Part 2 that I still haven't gotten to.
Is that out already?
Yeah, it's out.
Man,
I have
okay. Oh shit, really? Is it streaming anywhere? Because I actually wasn't aware that came out.
I think it might be on Tubi.
Okay, all right. I'll have to look into it. Yeah, we should also check that one out and maybe do if not a podcast episode, then like something, for it. But
for sure.
But that 1031 was also pretty dope. I definitely prefer the barn just because I think I like the way that the narrative was structured, and again, how it felt like a sort of more classic 80s style slasher movie, right? With all these monsters and shit like that. I just like the overall concept of it. I like being able to become attached to the main characters over the course of like a whole feature film. And even though I have my reservations a little bit with the main characters, not so much Josh, but like I've always found that Sam is like not the best, but I still kind of, he's still kind of endearing as like a character and as
a
an
little
actor.
dramatic,
a little dramatic, a little stiff at times, but I don't know. I've kind of come to like him as like an actor and the character. So I liked the Bushwackers, that's what they call themselves in the first movie. And like getting to know like the side characters and the monsters, and the monsters were one of the best parts of the barn. So, yeah, I really enjoy the first movie, and I like 1031 as well, but, for some reason it's not as memorable to me as the barn. So that's why I was really looking forward to the barn part 2, because it was going to be a continuation of all that stuff. We get to maybe see what happens to, the Bushwhackers and all that. So, yeah, I understand. I mean, my expectations weren't incredibly high either, because it's not like this was Evil Dead Rise or something like that. It wasn't like they were going to magically get like a $20 million budget and crank out like the next Halloween movie or some shit like that. But
yeah, it was just a passion project for their cult following.
Exactly. And yeah, like you pretty much alluded to, crowdfunded, just like I believe the first one was. So, I mean, this is really backed by passionate horror fans who want to see, monsters, sex, and like fake blood and and just like shit like that, right? So that's essentially what part 2 is as well. So,
and honestly, it didn't disappoint in that sense. No. I felt like it achieved what it wanted to. Mm-hmm. Like I said, didn't take itself seriously, delivered the Halloween feel, the slasher feel, the tropes and everything. And it's, I don't know. I thought it was fine, and I felt like it was just as good as the first one. The first one definitely had that magic, to me at least, because when I watched it, like I found it with you. Maybe that's why it had that magic. Not trying to get all sappy, but like it was a movie that we found together and that we enjoyed together, and our eyeballs and our brain got to like watch it and absorb that at the same time for the first time for both of us. And that's what really made it special to me, was like finding that movie with you and then being able to be like, you remember when we sat down and randomly just found the barn? Like that was crazy.
That was a fantastic discovery. And I mean, it's not the only movie that we've discovered like that, but but it's still special for sure. But even on rewatches, like I did rewatch a bunch of it before I checked out part 2, and it definitely still holds up. I mean, maybe part of that is like the nostalgia and the special attachment, but even not considering that, like there is still something kind of like magical about it, and whether it's just like the passion that you can feel behind it, or just how raw everything feels because it is a lower budget film, I don't know, but it's a really cool movie, and I agree. I think this one is pretty much just as good. There are, of course, aspects of it that I'm not like the biggest fan of, but we will get into that in just a minute once we get into the spoilers. But overall, I do enjoy it. I think if you've seen The Barn, you're definitely gonna like this one as well. But if you haven't, I definitely think you should check out both. And I think they would be actually a really cool like double feature, like a back-to-back viewing.
I agree, and I think like, if you do enjoy The Barn and The Barn Part 2, if that's like your forte of like cheesy horror, then definitely also check out Justin M. Seaman's other stuff like 1031, and I think he also did Volumes of Blood. Don't quote me on that.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, possibly.
I know he did, or did he do The Witching Hour? I'm not sure. I have to look into it, but I know 1031 for sure. The Hag, that segment with the guy who played Sam, he was in that as well, and that was my favorite segment on 1031.
He apparently did a movie called Cryptids, which I don't know why I haven't heard of before, because I love cryptid shit. But okay, this is also apparently an anthology where he did a movie, a segment called "The Beast of Bladenboro." I'm gonna have to seek this one out because this seems kind of cool.
Might be a good like little new movie for us to check out and talk about.
Out of 33 reviews, it's got a 7 out of 10 on IMDb, and it says it's an anthology film about a paranormal radio show that accepts calls from individuals who have encountered creatures from the unknown. Okay.
I love that premise.
Huh. Yeah. And it's funny, I don't think this is right, but the top cast, it says John Bloom as Harlan Dean, but it's got a picture of Joe Bob Briggs. Is that his real name, or did somebody just fuck up on IMDb?
I have no idea. I don't really dive into like if someone has an alias. I don't care for their real name because Joe Bob will always be Joe Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, speaking of which, we're gonna dive into the spoilers for The Barn Part 2 right now. So, fair warning: if you have not seen the movie yet and you don't want spoilers, you should still listen to the rest of the episode so that we get some traction. But
but you can always pause it.
But you can
pause it. Come back later after you watch it, and you let us know if you felt how we felt.
Exactly. Yeah. So now that you've seen the movie and we have your attention, let's talk about it. So obviously, there's a lot to dig into here. Like I alluded to, there's definitely things that are much bigger in The Barn Part 2. And I'm not even really sure where to start. So where do you want to start, Sam?
I mean, I think we should start at the beginning. Like, Michelle goes to... Is it this is where I was confused, where me and Olivia were confused. Okay. Because I watched The Barn with her as well, maybe a year or two ago. Because I wanted to show her like one of my favorite Halloween like theme movies. Did Michelle go back to the barn not knowing it was the barn? Or did she like go to a different barn that somehow summoned these demons from hell because of like the little symbols on it? Or did she go back thinking that the knocking would resurrect Sam and Josh?
So you're talking about the barn that they held like the haunted house in?
Yeah.
I think it was basically said that this was just another random barn that they just so happened to come across because it was that Charlie dude's uncle's or something like that, and they just needed some place to like hold a haunted house in. But I think it was explained at the very beginning of the movie
during the campfire, right?
From the preacher guy, that it doesn't matter really like if it's a specific barn or not. It just has to be a barn, and he just like has to paint the symbols on it, and it still triggers like the ritual. So they probably found out that they got a barn and just kind of thought like, you know what, like maybe if we try it, then we'll get them back. So
yeah, because I know Michelle mentioned near the end, like she knew, like when she knocked that, like she was hoping it would bring back Sam.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I think it was. Also, speaking of that, I don't know if you caught this, and I had to go back, and I don't think I'm wrong, but maybe I'm wrong. This is kind of a side. I mean, it's in the movie, but it's not exactly related to. Anyway, and I don't know if you paid that much attention to this, but okay, so when Michelle and God, what's her name?
Is it Josh's
sister's name? Yeah.
No fucking idea, honestly. I was just like, that's okay. Josh's sister, the blonde.
I know, girl. Yeah, I know. I feel bad. Maybe it's Heather. Bad with names. Is it Heather? I'm on the IMDb. I think it's Heather, maybe. Anyway, when they are like figuring out the fundraiser thing for the haunted house, and they go to like the video store and they encounter Charlie for the first time, and he tells them about it's his uncle, right? He says, my uncle has like a place or a barn or whatever that you could use for your haunted house, because he sends them there, remember?
Yeah.
And I was really confused. It's not that big of a deal, but Charlie is obviously white and the uncle is very not white. And so I wasn't sure. Guy with the suspenders? Yeah, so I wasn't sure about the relation. It's not important at all, but it's just like a funny thing that I noticed. I was like, hold on, did he say it's his uncle? And I had to like rewind and make sure that that's what he said.
Listen,
And I was like, huh.
listen, Charlie could be mixed.
I mean, maybe, yeah.
I mean,
I mean, it's
maybe
very
his uncle-
possible. I'm not like,
or maybe he was adopted, or
yeah, could be. I
Was
was
that
just
his-
trying to like think about it.
Was that supposed to be his uncle, or was that supposed to be like the caretaker?
I don't know. I think he said it was his uncle, so I just assumed that was him. I mean, you're right. It could have been a caretaker. But
Yeah, honestly, because I was like, who is this black man?
it's
'Cause he
not a
did say
big deal at all.
No, I
but
did
it's just
notice
like,
it, but like,
I don't know, it's just a funny thing I noticed, and I was like, hold on a second.
yeah.
Not that it's
I mean,
impossible, but
I mean, it could be like his aunt married a black guy.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
And that's still your uncle.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I just thought it was like, of course, it's like a very real possibility. It was kind of just funny to me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I noticed it too, but I just was like, I'm just suspending my disbelief.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but I just wanted to bring that up. But, but yeah. So even at the very beginning of the movie, though, let's just jump right back into the analysis. I love that they harken back to the original film and basically just killed a bunch of kids outright, like right at the beginning, which is basically what the barn did.
And then spoiler alert. Well, we already said.
Yeah.
The demons killed the preacher too.
Yep.
They
They
were
basically
just
take control.
But also, like, why did the demons need to be summoned by knocking on the barn if they were already back and killed the preacher?
Well, they were. Well, hold on. Now I'm trying to like rack my brains to think about what happened. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they were back, but I don't think they were resummoned. I think when they knocked, they summoned more demons, right?
And then that attracted like the original 3 back to that barn.
I think, yeah, I think so. That sounds about right. That's what I'm going with. Because at first,
suspending disbelief, we're going with it.
because were the pig and the raven or crow demon or whatever at the very beginning, or was it just the original 3? Can't remember.
I think it was the original 3.
Okay, well now I don't remember.
Because then I remember when they were at the haunted house, like we didn't even really we heard the crow man, raven man first, and then I was so worried that the raven and the pig were Josh and Sam. Were you?
Oh, honestly, I didn't even really think about it.
Olivia, I wasn't thinking about it. Then Olivia's like, "Oh my god, do you think the bird and the pig are Josh and Sam?" I was like,
Damn.
"Please no."
Yeah, well, I mean, we're already in spoiler territory, but obviously it wasn't them. But
It wasn't.
yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that at all. Although, now since we're on that topic, I guess, you know, we already mentioned that there were more monsters. Of course, I think it's cool that they added more monsters and even those like little minions and stuff.
And the zombies.
But, yeah, the zombies were pretty cool. But honestly, I'm not like the biggest fan of the pig and the crow monster.
No, I felt like I guess like, because I mean the original 3's shtick was like a scarecrow, the boogeyman, and a pumpkin head.
Yeah,
a la Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, but also bird and pig. Like,
yeah, it's, I don't know. I think they could have been cool, but they just.
And then the next movie is going to be a tiger man and a ladybug man.
A ladybug man could be terrifying, though.
And a man from the sea, a sea man.
Sea man. That'd be funny. Or a semen covered man.
Oh. He just comes out the portal. He's like, oh, I need a shower.
Honestly, I wouldn't put it past these guys, though, because, I mean, they do have some, like, messed up shit in their movies. But
yeah, but it was fantastic.
That's hilarious.
Also,
can we
also talk about, like, the weird, how, like, a lot of parts of the movie, like that big fight sequence at the church or, like, town hall, whatever, was kind of, like, drawn out, anticlimactic, and then it just, like, ended abruptly.
Yeah.
And they were like, go back inside, and she just kind of, like, waddled back inside.
I also did think the transition was extremely weird. Wasn't it like Linnea Quigley's character like takes a chainsaw or something to one of them, and then that's like the last we see of her, and then it cuts to whoever it is at like that convenience store or something like that.
Yeah,
Isn't
it
that
was
kinda
like
what happened?
It was really like not awkward. It was just like the way it went from one person to
Yeah.
another killing the demons was really weird. And then Ari Lehman was like killing people, and then his
Yeah.
boy died, and then he just stood there and got eaten. Like,
Yeah.
it was really, really, it was kind of awkward.
Mm-hmm. The
But
struck. No, go ahead.
Didn't like ruin it for me, but
Yeah.
like it was really drawn out. And me and Olivia were sitting there, and Olivia was like, "What's happening right now?"
I know. I mean, the movie itself is like pretty choppy anyway, but there were definitely some parts of part 2 where I thought the structuring just could have been a little bit better. Like, I don't know if they storyboarded it or what, but maybe they could have benefited from it if they did. Just because scenes like that were kind of weird. It's like they were trying to make a montage, but it wasn't really a montage, and it was just
exactly. I felt like even the fight sequences like weren't physical, if you know what I mean. Like it didn't seem physical enough. The fighting wasn't like aggressive enough.
Yeah.
Like it almost didn't seem. It was just kind of like thump,
yeah,
boop, and then like 2 seconds of like silence before it transitioned to like another action.
Yeah.
Sequence, like someone hitting someone with like a shovel, and then it was like,
yeah,
and then like 2 seconds of silence, and then it would switch.
I guess I mean the fight and like the stunt choreography wasn't the greatest. I mean, not that I expected it to be from a movie like this, but it could have been a little bit better. I think what worked for the barn part 1 is that you didn't really have too much like pushback from the characters. Besides Sam and Josh, most of the other characters didn't put up much of a fight, so they just got like fucking ganked by the monsters, you know? Which is, I mean, it's probably how it should be. They were like, they had no knowledge of these monsters, and they were defenseless teenagers, and they really had to like show that the monsters were like ruthless, right? So it was mostly just like a swipe or whatever, and then the character was dead. But in this one, it was like they were trying to do a little bit more with the scenes, which I get, but some of it was a little wonky.
Yeah, but it didn't take me out of it.
No.
Like, I was just kind of sitting there like looking left and right. Like,
yeah.
like, is this... I couldn't tell if like when like they would kill one of the monsters, if it was going to keep going, or if like it was going to be over because of like how long it lasted, and then how long like the awkward little like moments of nothingness after they killed the monster were. And I was just like, it seemed like there was no sense of urgency when the monsters were all like walking toward them, and they were just killing them all one at a time. It didn't seem like they were in any danger. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does, yeah. But you know what? At the same time, though, it's shit like that reinforces the fact that this is a movie that was like, and this is hyperbole because I don't know, you might know because you backed the movie, but made on like, you know, a $20,000 budget or whatever, right? It's more than that, I'm sure, but I'm just, you know, exaggerating, but
yeah, ballpark.
yeah, sure. But it reinforces that fact. You know, if that shit was happening in like a Christopher Nolan movie, I'd be like, yo, was everybody high on like PCP when they were
like what's going on?
But
yeah, it like, I don't know, but it's excusable because like maybe that was intentional.
Yeah, to be kind of like corny, campy, you know, because shit like that definitely happened in actual 80s and even 90s like horror movies, you know.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
Yeah, where that maybe like department wasn't like as advanced or whatever, and so, you know, and they had a smaller budget, they had actors who maybe had never like been in a fight before, which is probably most of them, and they didn't have like a stunt coordinator or whatever, so they were just kind of doing the best they could. We'll just say that they were doing the best they could.
Some trivia though. I don't know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I found this out the other day and I forgot to tell you. There's actually The Barn Part 2. They released a Super Nintendo game that you could back, and a Barn Part 1 regular NES game.
But it's like actual
games,
it's
actual
for those damn.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I wonder if I could get it on like an emulator or something, because I mean, I sure as fuck don't have either of those consoles, but it would be cool.
The backing for the game actually made almost $10,000.
Damn. Wow. What's the goal?
I can't see the goal. I'm trying to click on the campaign for the actual The Barn. The Barn Part 2 made $56,072.
I wonder what the budget was. Or oh, you mean that's what it made on?
Yeah, on Indiegogo.
Okay. I was
So 50
almost halfway there.
Yeah, and by yeah, it looks like the Barn Part 2, the game is, I can't tell if it's being released or if it was released, the Barn and the Barn Part 2 video game. A strange fog has rolled into the town of Helen's Valley. Come an army of zombies, goblins, and the barn baddies. Join Sam and Michelle as they battle enemies through town into cemeteries. Yeah, it's like an actual game. You can play as Drive-In Joe, Dottie, Sam, Michelle, Heather, and Charlie.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's an actual game. Sam at the torture room, Drive-In Joe at the drive-in, Dottie at the playhouse. Yeah. Okay. And they have a board game as well.
Nice. Oh, I might have to get the board game. That'd be sick. Nice. Well, so $56,000 budget. I mean, it shows, but I think they did a lot with that budget in this movie. Like I said, it definitely feels way bigger than The Barn Part 1. And I feel like a chunk of that probably had to go to not only the effects, which are definitely better than The Barn Part 1, and also to some of their cameo appearances as well, which we kind of alluded to, but obviously if you've seen the movie, you know that, Lloyd Kaufman's in it, Doug Bradley, Pinhead
as Josh's
himself.
grandpa.
Yep. He
Doug
has
Bradley's
a really cool
Josh's
scene.
grandpa. And also apparently Doug Bradley lives with Josh's dad, and they both also live in the Myers house.
Yep. Yeah, so fun bit of trivia here. It says Sarah Barnhart's house was actually filmed at a life-size replica of the Myers house from John Carpenter's Halloween, located in Hillsborough, North Carolina. And it's apparently the personal residence of horror fan Kenny Caperton. I didn't know that, but
shout out Kenny.
Pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty dope. So that's really cool. Your house is in a movie now, so that's awesome. And Doug Bradley sat in the seat, no less.
And then we got Joe Bob Briggs as Drive-In Joe. And who else do we have? You mentioned Lloyd Kaufman.
Yep. Diana Prince, who's Darcy the male girl.
Yep.
Is one of the sorority sisters. Those are kind of the big ones. But they were really cool. Joe Bob's only in it for like a scene. And another bit of trivia here, which is fun. Apparently his name is John Bloom, by the way. So that must be his real name. I don't know. But it says he was in that Cryptids movie, and it says he filmed his scene on the same day he filmed scenes for Cryptids, which was a year before the rest of the movie was filmed. He couldn't remember his lines and ended up improvising much of his dialogue. It's actually kind of hilarious. Like, even in that scene, it kind of seems like he might be improvising, because it's so hard to determine, though, because he does such a good job at riffing, like how he does on The Last Drive-In. Like, he's such a great talker. So even though he only had a few minutes in The Barn Part 2, he was one of the standout parts for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's pretty exciting because, obviously these like horror icons have had to at least have seen The Barn Part 1, and they were into the sequel so much that they came on. I mean, even though, it wasn't for like a ton of screen time, Diana Prince or Darcy definitely had the most screen time out of all of them. But I mean, I think they all did a great job, and they all wanted to do this. And it just makes me excited for if there's a Barn Part 3, what kind of horror legends are we going to see in that movie? So I'm looking forward to that for sure. But apart from that, like I said, everything has been kind of bigger, the kills and everything else. So we could talk about just how the plot progresses, what we like, don't like about it, and the kills too. Overall, I think the plot was pretty cool. It seems like kind of a natural progression from The Barn 1, and I like the fact that we get Michelle and Heather as the protagonists now for most of the movie. How do you feel about their story, and how do you feel about them as the protagonists, like compared to Sam and Josh?
I thought it worked and it made sense. I knew they were going to take the Sam and Josh. I didn't read any synopsis or any spoilers ahead, but I had a feeling this was going to be like Sam and Josh disappeared that night, but I didn't know where it was going to go from there. I thought it was going to follow like a new group of kids who hears about it. I liked the route that they took with bringing Michelle and Heather into it, because two people really close to them that missed them very much, that were wondering like where the hell did they go, and seeing them go through their own adventure of this and seeing what and being able to deduce like what happened to Sam and Josh as it happened to them, like, oh shit, this shit was real, and this is what Sam and Josh had to go through. Because you remember Michelle saying, oh, I just saw people in hoods last time, I didn't really get to see much of anything. But if I remember correctly, didn't she get attacked by one of them while she was like in the van trying to leave?
By one of the monsters, you mean?
Yeah, I thought she got attacked by
know.
either the Scarecrow or the Boogeyman.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. It's possible, but it might have been one of those things where, you know, maybe she was, but she was so like panicky and afraid that, you know, she didn't know what she saw, that kind of a thing, right? I mean, maybe she thought it was her imagination or something like that, because she was about to be fucking sacrificed. That's what I'm going to go with, because I can't exactly remember. But obviously it was a traumatic event, and so if she did, it could have just, you know, all been in her mind, in her opinion. Who knows? But that's why in this movie they really stress that, you know, once this shit starts happening to them, they really actually, you know, truly believe it. And for a good chunk of it, Heather especially doesn't really believe in it because nothing really happened to her.
Yeah, and then she left to go get some stuff before, like literally minutes before shit hit the fan. And then she came back to like all her sorority sisters like turn into zombies, and you know, Charlie like hiding in a closet like, your sorority sisters just tried to eat me, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she kind of like came into it blind, and honestly, I thought she was going to be dead, but she was badass and she like fought back, and I was like kind of shook that like they didn't like kill her off, especially like after like big spoiler, Sam makes his return, and he kind of just came out of a wall and was like, I'm here now.
Yeah.
It's like, and here's the part that confused me.
Okay.
Sam was like unaware that how much time went by. But, and then fast forward, Josh comes back, spoiler alert, sees his sister and goes, a long time no see, sis. So did Sam and Josh experience different things? Because we know Sam and Josh got separated. So maybe for Sam, it was like, felt like it's been hours. But for Josh, he experienced it different. And it's like literally been years for him, just as it was for everybody else.
That's possible. I mean, I hope that that's something that they'll get into if and when they do a part 3. But that's a really curious theory. I'm not sure. I also kind of think it might just be Josh, you know, being like a jokester, because that is kind of his personality, you know, just to like come back and say a quippy, cool one-liner or whatever, you know.
Josh gives me like Devin Sawa vibes.
Yeah, I can see that. But I just think that's kind of his personality. Although you might be onto something. I mean, you know, we won't really know until another movie comes out, I think, especially because he does come back literally right at the end. So we don't get to get that same explanation that we do from Sam, you know? Go ahead.
Go on, sorry.
No, all you.
Oh, no, yours was going to be a continual thought. I was going to bring up another gripe I had.
Well, mine is also kind of a gripe, but I was just going to say with Josh coming back, it was a cool reveal at the end, but I also felt kind of gypped by only seeing him at the end of the movie, because I felt like getting both characters in and like having them interact and getting maybe a little bit more of like Josh's backstory would have been cool to see. But I guess it also kind of works considering how the movie ends, you know, and now
oh my God,
they might almost kind of be enemies. So I guess
we got to explain that part.
Huh?
We got to explain that part so everyone gets what we're talking about there.
Well, if you've seen the movie, then yeah, but it's basically it's implied that Sam might be now possessed or something by the monsters, or a monster himself.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, after Sam comes back on screen, he gets not even 30 minutes on screen and then he gets killed.
Yep. And then
They kill Sam.
I know. Well, yeah, they kill him, but then he comes back at the very, very end and
sees Charlie and Michelle locking lips.
Yep. And they see him too, or at least Michelle does, I think, right? And then he gets like that like demonic kind of glimmer in his eye or whatever, and then the movie's over. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting. I kinda like it. But
I do, because I feel like they purposely set up Josh to come back at the end to set up Sam versus Josh for the next movie. Is Josh going to snap him out of it? Is Josh going to have to like take care of Sam for good? Is Sam going to kill Josh? Or is Sam going to kill Michelle? Is Sam going to kill Heather? Or are they all going to end up killing Sam? Or is he going to end up killing all of them? So many questions. Yeah. And I really like that they ended it like that, but I was very sad that that's what happened to Sam.
I know. Yeah, me too. I mean, he did kind of have a hero's death, which is good, but at least he's not like dead completely. So I am very interested to see what happens. I mean, considering that, I do think it is interesting. And now that I kind of think about it that way, it's not a terrible thing that Josh wasn't in more of the movie, because if he was, maybe Sam wouldn't have died. You know what I mean? And
yeah, because their whole Bushwackers thing. Happened. Like, I mean, we thought Josh was dead meat in the first movie, remember?
Yep.
And then he came back.
Yeah, I'm curious though, because I mean, Sam, like he said, he didn't find Josh. He didn't know where he was, and so they could have had completely different experiences. It's going to be interesting to dive into. That's another reason why I like that we had, you know, Michelle and Heather, because even though their characters weren't as important in the first movie, they're obviously important to this movie, but what's especially important is that more like emotional and personal connection to Sam and Josh. And if we just had like some other random characters, even if Sam and Josh happened to come back or whatever, I feel like it wouldn't have been the same, because this really feels like more of an actual narrative, like story continuation of the barn with these same characters, rather than just like another random kind of event. And a lot of franchises do that, and I never really like it too much. And even though legacy sequels have their issues, I like the fact that we do get those origin characters and we get to continue their story. And that's what I liked about The Barn Part 2 as well, is that we get to continue that, you know, Sam and Josh and now Michelle and Heather's story. But I also thought that Michelle and Heather did come into their own here. They were both pretty awesome. We got, you know, a little more knowledge about who they are as like characters, which is cool. And they held their own. And I also think it's cool that we had like final boys in the first movie, and now we have the more conventional, final girls as well, which is cool. And they did a great job, like you said. So I liked that. The story overall, I think, made sense. It was cool. I really didn't have an issue with the story itself or the characters really or anything. It was mainly just like other little things, like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I thought aspects. What?
The random reveal that Michelle had booby trapped the place.
Oh yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah, there were a lot of like little fun, stupid moments in the movie, but I was gonna say mainly my kind of gripes weren't so much with the story or the characters or anything, because I actually thought like the writing was actually pretty solid. You know, not all the dialogue or anything was great, but I wouldn't expect that of a movie like this. But
yeah,
how the actual story progressed and everything, especially with like that ending, like we described, was actually quite good. But there were still aspects to like other things, like even the monsters themselves, that I wasn't as big of a fan of. And I don't know, and I'll get into that a little bit, but also just like for some reason this movie, in comparison to part 1, it didn't feel off, but it didn't feel like it quite had the same type of magic that the first movie did. You know what I mean? And I don't think it was
the same like feel like it was in the same universe, because a lot of horror movies have that weird like it doesn't feel like the same continuity, but this at least felt like it was a real continuation of the barn and not just some like random shit that they decided. Like it,
I mean,
like the new main characters and everything, but it didn't have that like like you said, the magic of the first barn, because it was like sequels never have that magic though. Let's be real, and it's hard to capture the magic that the barn did, because like Barn 1 was probably like it was the very first in the series, The Barn, and it was like a passion project, and it was probably like one of like, I'm guessing like one of the actors' first movies and stuff like that. So like I'm guessing it's just like a bunch of friends making a movie together, you know, like as passion projects should be. And like, I don't know, man, it was, part 2 was good. It's just like you said, the magic just wasn't the same. It like was, the characters all had great chemistry though.
Yeah. It was still good. I mean, it was a solid movie, but it's hard to describe. It's just something about it. Like while I was watching it, I was like, this is fun, this is cool, but for some reason it's just like, I don't know, like how the barn progresses, like how the story like develops, and how, you know, we get the monsters stalking the characters and killing them off, and then we see that awesome kind of like gearing up, and it's like the Bushwackers, now they're going after the monsters and like stopping this ritual from happening. I don't know, all that together just felt like more special to me. And there's nothing wrong with the barn part 2, it just doesn't have that kind of aspect to it. And I can't really put my finger quite on why, besides maybe like the reasons that you just mentioned, but there was that. But overall, I mean, I didn't really have too many other gripes. Like there were weird scenes like you mentioned, and there were some aspects to the monsters that I wasn't like the biggest fan of. I already mentioned that I wasn't a huge fan of like the pig and the crow, but the boogeyman, the miner, was still cool, and I think
the boogeyman is my favorite.
Was still cool. Yeah, mine too. But I'm not sure that I love this sort of like redesigned look for the scarecrow as much.
Yeah, he's just a corn cob.
Yeah, he's just like a weird looking corn cob monster with like leaf ears. I don't know. It was a little weird. And mostly that, and then that like amalgamation at the end where like the three of them fused together was also like, I don't know. Like it was kind of cool, but there was something about it that just didn't sit right with me.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was its
that's
big
why,
fucking mouth or something, but it was just kind of like awkward for me. I don't know.
I mean, that's why, I don't know. It's something about fusing different entities together, just like I'm not the biggest fan of, which is why I didn't like the monster at the end of Evil Dead Rise. But I get it. They're going to be one big family. And what was the reason for fusing these three monsters together?
I honestly have no idea. I think somebody maybe watched like Power Rangers right before that, and they were like, let's do like a Megazord, but with these three fucking demon monsters.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The boogeyman's head being the size of a small child was jarring.
Yeah, true. It was definitely off-putting, and then like the two heads right next to it, and then it's got the one body. It was a little weird. But I mean, everything else was pretty solid. Like you get that sleazy aspect to the movie. You know, did this one seem like way sleazier to you though than the first one?
Yeah, it was like borderline like fucking raunchy, and like the kills were more mean-spirited, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Which I don't necessarily mind so much, but this movie I think definitely took that aspect of, you know, like sex is a sin to the fucking maximum, because there were lots of those scenes, and then the kills in response to like those events were gnarly.
Yeah, they were like kind of crazy, and then just people laying dead with their tits out. Like, it's a little wild for me.
It was maybe a little over the top. Like maybe that's one thing that I also wasn't a huge fan of. I mean, obviously you get stuff like that in 80s horror, but it would have been fine if it was like maybe a couple scenes in this one, but it felt like it was a bunch. And I don't know. I know that's like a weird, almost prudish thing to complain about, but it didn't feel necessary like all the time, like to the level that it was in the Barn Part 2.
Yeah, like every kill has to be like visceral. Like
Yeah, that's
we didn't really get like a really quick plunk to the head with the hammer and then move
right.
on. It was kind of like stab, eyeball pops out of the back of the head, rip out the throat, and it was like thought it was cool. I think they were just more being like showing off the practical effects, which I respect. I
Yeah, that's
respect
fine.
that.
I mean, in this day and age, I think you kind of have to. You got shit like Terrifier coming out, where it's like, you know, like in a fucking new dimension level of brutality. Then it's almost like you have to compete with that, you know?
Yeah, I get
So I think
that.
that's kind of what they were doing with this one. But what was your favorite kill?
I'll tell you what wasn't my favorite kill.
Okay.
One of them was kind of basic. The woman being like, hung and then her neck snapped. That was like the least like dramatic kill.
Was that the scarecrow during that like BDSM scene or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite kill was like pretty classic though, because it was like a la Jason X, the boogeyman ripping someone's heart out. Because it wasn't like over the top. It was like reach in, switch the angle to behind the guy, show him ripping his heart out. It was very like not like a braggadocious special effect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I like that. When special effects are really like in your face and like crazy, it's like, okay, I get it. This is what murder looks like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
My favorite may have to be there were a bunch that I thought were just kind of whatever, like all the zombies and the crone shit just like biting and eating people. I even thought that Darcy or Diana Prince's death was cool. I mean, she is who she is, so I know they had to give her like kind of an over the top one, but it was mainly just a bunch of those like zombie things and monsters eating her. I think they could have been a little more creative with her death in the movie, but there were a bunch of kills like that I thought were just kind of like throwaway kills almost.
Yeah.
But there were some really cool ones. And my favorite might have to be the s'mores kill at
Oh.
the beginning of the movie. I think that was just cool. You get the stick through the guy's mouth into the marshmallow. That was pretty cool. And then
that kind of gave us a taste of things to come.
Yeah.
Like it was like, this is what to expect. We're gonna be really graphic with this one, and that was pretty dope. Like you said, you gotta like push the envelope because of Terrifier.
Yep. And then the preacher gets like scalped also like soon after that. And then a bunch of kids die. So it's like, okay. I think the kills were pretty consistent after the fact. So overall, I mean, I don't really have a problem with the gore or anything. Obviously, they had to ratchet it up to 11, and I think they did just that. And yeah, I mean, overall, I think the practical effects were cool. They even had a freaking explosion in there, which granted wasn't like incredible, but it was a pretty sufficient explosion for a $56,000 movie.
For sure.
So overall on that front, I think that it succeeded. And like I said, you know, it's harkening back to those 80s style horror movies. And I think it does a great job of that. There are certain small things that I'm not the biggest fan of, but overall, this is just the kind of movie that you have to sit down. And if you're a nostalgic type of horror fan, you just kind of have to enjoy it because it's exactly the kind of stuff that we grew up with. So
yeah, honestly, it might be a little over the top, but I mean, you always gotta push the envelope if you're making a sequel, especially in lieu of Terrifier 2 coming out. And this one I know came out a little bit after Terrifier 2. I think this one was actually released around November of last year, if I'm not mistaken.
This one, I'm not sure. I think it came to Screambox this year, but
okay,
it probably came out at like some festivals or something. So it is still pretty new. And then obviously Terrifier 2 came out last year. But I don't know. Yeah, we'll see what happens. The ending to this movie definitely made me really excited for a part 3. And just like Terrifier 3, I think they have the potential to really dive into some really cool story elements in part 3 and make that one even bigger. Maybe it'll even show them going into hell or whatever, you know, like that would be pretty dope. but I think that they can really elevate the story of Sam and Josh, and now mostly Michelle, but also Heather and them. Maybe Charlie will come back, who knows. And really make it, from a narrative perspective, really, really cool, which is hard to do with a movie like this. But I think they have the groundwork to make it really awesome. And if they do that kind of stuff, and if they have an even bigger budget, I think it could be really, really cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a solid trilogy if that's the route that they want to go.
Yeah, I don't know if they should do much more than that, especially if they intend to keep the same characters. Like, if they had different characters, that might be a different story. But does this have the longevity of like a Friday the 13th? No, probably not. But again, that movie or that franchise also had different characters, But could this be something like a Phantasm? Maybe. I feel like at that point, though, you're kind of stretching it out. Like, I don't know how they're going to stretch out that story for like 3 more movies, but as a trilogy, it could be totally, totally perfect. So
yeah, I think a trilogy would suffice. Like, let's not go the Child's Play route and release a bunch of stinkers after the first 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is a story that I feel like doesn't need a shit ton of like lore and stuff,
Yeah, you don't need to really expand upon it because then it just gets convoluted.
Exactly. So yeah, guys, those are our thoughts on The Barn Part 2. Sam, anything else before we head out?
No, honestly, I enjoyed it. You can pick up a copy off Amazon or Scream Team Releasing, or if you want to watch it on Screambox, that's where it is. But that's if you're a collector like me. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this is one that's worth collecting. I don't know if the physical edition has any cool, like, special features or anything on it, but I'm interested in picking it up. I don't think I own either movie on physical, but I would like to, just because with stuff like this, I mean, it'll probably always be on like a Tubi or something, but you never know, and I think it's like a cool little cult thing to own. But yeah, I feel the same way. I think it's just as good as The Barn Part 1, maybe not better, but as like a back-to-back viewing, I think it's pretty awesome. And, if you're watching this on like a spooky date night on a weekend or whatever, then I think you're going to be in for a really good time.
I agree.
So, Gravers, that's going to do it for episode 107. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, our next podcast is going to be all about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game, which at the time of this recording is coming out in just 2 days. We're both super pumped about it, and we should have a really cool episode coming out for you next. But for right now, at least, this has been our discussion of The Barn Part 2. Sam, if the people want more grave discussions, where can they find us?
They can find us on Apple Podcasts. They can find us on Spotify. I'm pretty sure they can still find us on Stitcher. I actually found us on this, like, I think it was Podbean, right?
Yeah.
They found us on Podbean, which, like, okay, I guess we're on there too. And there was like another, I was actually telling one of my friends, Ed, on Xbox that like about our podcast. He's like, are you on this platform? And I was like, I don't know. I don't think so. I forgot which platform it was. And I looked it up and we were on it, like all of our shit. So I was like, fuck, I guess. Okay. And most importantly, you can find us on gravediscussions.net, and you can check out our previous episodes. You can read our like Meet the Hosts, which kind of needs to be updated because like my favorite movies have like also changed, and
we'll do that. Yeah,
you can read a lot of Barnabas's articles as well, and make sure you check out our TikTok, and make sure to check out our YouTube channel and check out some episodes of Barnabas's Boneyard, please.
Yes. And I know that you've been itching to get on the YouTube channel too, and we will definitely do that. We're going to have more episodes of like the both of us, but I'm still going to be doing Barnabas's Boneyard too. Sam, if you ever want to do your own little segment, I mean, then the more the merrier. So, I mean, we've got big things coming for all our platforms, honestly. And like, I still try to post almost daily, if not, every other day on TikTok. So, follow that, follow the YouTube, follow Facebook and Instagram as well. We do not have a Twitter anymore. I actually deactivated that just because we didn't really use it that much. And now it's like X. Like, what
Yeah,
the fuck? So,
I'm just
I'm not
just
going to
not
get
a,
into that.
and I'm not a giant fan of Elon. So
No. Sorry. Any Elon Musk fanboys, if you're listening to this, I mean, don't take it personally, but maybe take it a little personally.
Yeah, he's just not my forte. Like,
Nah.
I don't wish harm upon the guy or anything. Like,
No.
God bless, but
just not our thing.
No, thank you. Yeah, no.
So
it's like Andrew Tate is not my thing. That's far from my fucking thing.
No. So those other platforms, though, definitely give us a follow. You can keep up to date with all of our new episodes, movie reviews, and all that kind of stuff. You can find me on defectofilmreviews.com as well, where I cover new horror movies as well as other new movies if you're into that kind of thing. But yeah, that's going to do it, though. Again, follow, subscribe so you can hear and see all the new Grave Discussions content. But until next time, fiends, we'll see you back
on Grave Discussions. We'll try to be more consistent now.